because it is definitely has a barrier to entry. So we've had so many amazing um, speakers throughout. You can see all of those on our coalition YouTube page under Backcountry Beta. Lots that you can go back and watch. It's put on by Coalition Snow, which is a ski and snowboard company based in Reno. We've been making skis and snowboards over 10 years and doing a lot more if you follow us. Also, we put this on in partnership with TREW Gear. Alexis, our speaker today, is an ambassador for them. They make really amazing outerwear. They're based up in Oregon, and also are conscious about repurposing your gear that's too far gone past getting repaired, but they also do repairs as well and have this whole afterlife program. So it's really cool. And yeah, Coalition Snow and TREW have been putting this together for a while now, and it's pretty amazing. So again, I am your host here, Evan, and I'm gonna hand it over to the real Jen Gurecki for a moment before we jump in.
Thanks, Evan. That was a beautiful and perfect introduction to Coalition, and I just want a good job. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you. So, Evan has been organizing and facilitating Backcountry Beta for years, and I just get to show up and listen in, and I absolutely love that. You do an incredible job, Evan, and I just wanted to thank you for doing this year after year, session after session, and I always take something new away. And Alexis, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank TREW for partnering with us, and obviously all of you as well. Thanks for showing up on this Tuesday afternoon.
Thanks, Jen. All right, Alexis, if you're ready, jump on in.
Cool. I am ready. Let's see.
Alexis, do you also want to do a quick, I think you're going to do this in your
Yeah.
presentation, but
Small
we can
intro
learn who you are.
for sure. Cool. But yeah, I'll be talking about, I think you all know this because you signed up, but kind of human factors, whatever that means, and decision making in the backcountry. So yeah, I'm Alexis. I am based out of Seattle, Washington, and I am a skier. I work and ski, play all of the things, mostly at Snoqualmie Pass up in Washington, but kind of ski all over Washington as well. As Evan mentioned, TREW Ambassador, that's how and why I'm here. I'm also a ski guide, area instructor, and I work on ski patrol search and rescue up here. And then I have my master's in human-centered design and engineering, which is what makes me slightly qualified to talk about this stuff. But prefacing all of that with like, I'm not the expert. There's so much good research out there about human factors, decision making, all of this fun stuff we'll talk through today. And I included a bunch of the references I used to make this presentation in the back. So if anyone is curious from learning, from the real experts, that'll be there. But yeah, super excited for the session. Thanks all for joining, I think. And I won't be able to see like the chat or how many
Oh,
people are here if you have your hands up.
yeah,
Um,
I can keep an eye
okay,
on the chat if people have questions in the moment that's like pertaining to something that you're talking about, and I can
cool.
jump in. Yeah.
And then since we have a pretty small group, I'd love to just hear from everyone really quick, like maybe just your name. We can do pronouns and then maybe how long you've been in the backcountry, if at all. And then I'll get to know you a bit more throughout the session, but we can do a quick round.
Do you want that in the chat or do you want people to unmute themselves?
Let's have people unmute themselves.
Okay, we can do popcorn style maybe.
Cool.
Okay.
I see Fern. No, I don't see Fern.
Fern, you have to unmute.
How about that?
Okay,
Can you
we
hear
can hear
me?
you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Fern. I live outside of Park City, And I'm a skier. I've been backcountry skiing for 8 to 10 years, something like that. So
I can just call on people. Jen Gurecki.
I was gonna say, Evan, just calling people. I'm Jen, she, her. I have been snowboarding in the backcountry for 20 some odd years and still would consider myself relatively intermediate when it comes to that. And I'm gonna popcorn it here to my partner, Kelly.
I'm Kelly, she, her, and I have zero experience in the backcountry. So far this has been extremely helpful.
Oh, and then Christine Phillips.
I don't know why my video's not coming up. Can you hear me?
Oh, we see you.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with Kelly. I don't have any experience in the backcountry. I love skiing though, and it's something I'd like to explore a little bit more and hope to get there. So that's why I'm here. And I love what you do at Coalition Snow, by the way. So yes, thank you.
Okay, I see Rachel S.
Hi, I'm Rachel, she, her, and this has been my first year in the backcountry. And I'm a skier also.
Awesome. Okay, who else do we have? Estelle.
Hi, um, I am brand new to backcountry and I just saw this on Instagram and I thought it'd be interesting. I took the AIARE course last year and I have a friend that wants me to get into it with him, but I'm a little nervous about the agreeing on risk factors. So that's why I'm here.
For sure. Welcome. Okay. Rachel, wait, let's see here. Sorry. Okay, Rachel J in the chat says I'm more backcountry curious and an intermediate skier. They were saying that it's a bit noisy, so they're not going to unmute. And then Letitia, if you would like to do a quick intro.
Mute. All right, there we are. Sorry.
You're good.
I live in Santa Fe, and my best friend is getting into backcountry skiing, and she's slowly dragging me with her. And so I know like very little. Just did an intro to backcountry skiing weekend up in Ouray, and it's like, all right, is this, yeah, I'm like with Estelle in terms of fear factor and, I don't know. Yeah, so that's why I'm taking this, just to get a little bit more comfortable and learn a little bit more so that I have more of a, I don't know, knowledge base so I can make more educated decisions, I guess. So,
Amazing.
Cool. Thanks. Good to hear from everyone. I feel like I'm going to be really awkward presenting on Zoom, so it just helps feel more human. And I think really great. There's kind of, a range of experience. And so the cool thing about all of this information is it applies to just life, like everyday life decision making. And so when I ask, we're going to kind of just share as a group examples as we walk through of some of the information to get like everyone involved, think about examples from literally your everyday life, decision making. If you hike, climb, bike, like any of the outdoor things, or any time that, you're in an environment where you're making decisions, that's going to be helpful to also just apply to this conversation. So, come on. Sold. Okay. That being said, some goals. Let's just understand what, human factors is. We're going to learn about this term facets, which some of you have done in L1, area L1 might have learned. Again, we're going to reflect on like personal experiences and look at our own personal patterns in terms of decision making. And the most important, learn from each other. again, I'm a little bit qualified to talk about this, but like I'm essentially facilitating this conversation and helping us share stories, questions, lessons, anything like that. And so that being said, like no judgment zone. I think in this industry and this space, we struggle with this sometimes and just being open about either, mistakes we've made, questions we have. And so this is just kind of having these types of conversations is one step. Um, in improving that. So hopefully we can practice that today. Cool. What are human factors? Cognitive shortcuts, biases, and social dynamics that influence our decisions, especially, amplified under uncertainty. And when this, was applied to kind of backcountry travel, it was first coined by Doug and Jill and then placed at the center of this avalanche triangle. And so for those who aren't familiar, the avalanche triangle is, made up of three things that you need all to happen at the same time to have an avalanche. And so that being unstable snow or snowpack, weather or some kind of trigger, and then avalanche terrain. And so if you don't have one of these aspects, then essentially an avalanche is not possible. And so what they did is kind of then threw the human in the middle, because if we're thinking about our avalanche risk, we need to be there. So kind of how they started framing it. And the hard about all these, human factors in terms of our decision making, a lot of these biases happen subconsciously, and so we don't actually even realize a lot of things that are influencing us while making, decisions under uncertainty or under stress or in the backcountry, anything like that. And then hopefully this comes through. Just a quick little fun intro video to get us started. We're going to talk about a lot, but I think this is a good way to start thinking about things. It again is funny, but I have definitely heard some of the things like out in the field that is said in the video, and I'm sure, some of you have too. So, Evan, can you just tell me if this comes through when I play it?
That was a nice skin track you put in
Yeah.
there. I couldn't wait to draw it.
If you mute yourself, we can't hear it.
Oh,
Thank
blower.
you.
Giddy
Yeah.
up. Let's strip it and rip it. Prepare to witness the sickness.
What are you talking about? We are here so I can teach you how to stay safe in avalanche terrain. We have to consider our options and make a decision where to ski based on the cold hard facts, not on emotions and not where the best powder is. It is these human factors that will get you in trouble.
But it is sick fat ner blower powder.
We should run some stability tests and maybe cut the slope.
But it is sick fat ner blower powder.
Then maybe one of us can tickle the kitty and put some tracks in between islands of safety while the other watches guard.
But it is sick fat ner blower powder. This sucks. These slopes are my backyard. I ski here all the time. My bros are slaying pow here all the time. This is where we build our kickers, right switch and get all skeezy and fly looking for the ski honeys. This slope never goes. It is all good. Look, you can even see the groomers from here, so it must be safe.
Familiarity is a classic human factor. Just because you know an area well does not mean it is safe.
You are twisting my melons with your snow geekness. I ride with my crew of badass homies and it is good. When we are together getting all skeezy, it is good. We dance with the big guy in the white suit all the time. It is who we are.
Seeking acceptance from our friends and seeking an identity from that group are also dangerous human factors. Your desire to be down with your homies and wanting to impress is putting you in danger. This is the truth.
Wow. I hope your nerdness is not infectious. I don't want your geek cooties. Listen. I ride with Jake all the time. Jake ties his shovel to his back with climbing cord, and his ski poles turn into a probe. So for sure he knows his shit. Jake knows all about your avalanche avoiding kung fu. He has like totally mad avalanche ninja skills. I know it is safe when I am skiing with Jake.
Expert Halo. Dangerous human factor right there.
Holy crap. Can you just stop it? Let's just ski the slope before some big panted snowboarders get up here and poach our fat line. I want to shred this nerd all to myself before it gets tracked out.
Scarcity. That is a good human factor.
That's it. I've had enough. I quit. I do not want to learn your avalanche avoiding kung fu. Instead, I will hang with my bro Bryce. We will ride together in the white room on our sick fat skis. It is all good because I have my transceiver and my shovel. To be extra safe, I will sell my minivan and buy an airbag pack so I can cheat the snow reaper by floating to the surface.
Herding instinct and risk homeostasis. Thoughts every human factor there is. Amazing. How are you still alive? Now I understand why you dress like a clown. It is because you are a clown. We should ski. You go first.
Cool. So yeah, that's more entertaining than I'm gonna be, for sure. But two things before we dive into that a little more. I know that some people don't have any backcountry travel ski snowboard experience, so if there's words or anything that's thrown out today and you have questions, just throw that in the chat or raise a hand, or I think Evan can answer. So, and on that, like what this presentation is not is snow science, anything technical in terms of, snowpack or skiing or riding. So just want to set that standard as well. Cool. Cool. So what that video kind of went over was this facets framework, which is just convenient that it falls into this facets acronym to go along with our snowpack study. But this was coined by Ian McKim. He did this by analyzing 715 avalanche accidents and kind of identified these six heuristic traps that seem to show up, in a large number of the avalanche accidents. And so, kind of recapping, I think the video covered most of these, but this first one, familiarity, this is the idea that we take more risks in terrain that we know. I think in the video he said, I forget his friend's name, has ridden this a million times, or this is his backyard. So we're gonna be fine. I definitely feel myself falling into this trap sometimes, and so it's a human factor, but I think just the first step is being aware of all these things so that we can continue to recognize them in ourselves. Yeah, and then A, acceptance. This was definitely brought up in the video, but essentially this desire for social approval and this peer pressure that drives decision making. This season, I taught a few free ride team AIARE level ones, which was super interesting. They were high schoolers. And it's kind of that part where, your brain is not fully developed and your like peer pressure, poor decision making is at an all-time high. And it was crazy to see, their ability to make decisions and what that looked like on the mountain, compared to others. So thought that was a good example. See, consistency, it's hard for us sometimes once we have a goal or a plan to change that, even when conditions say we could. Yeah, just something that, we're resistant to potentially, because that's what, it's been in our head for days, weeks, whatever it is. And then expert halo, this is definitely brought up in the video as well, and I'm sure most of you are familiar. This is essentially deferring to the perceived expert, and letting kind of their confidence skew our own judgment and concerns. So this quote is a good example of, I'm nervous about the slope, but since my ski partner has her AIARE 2 and isn't concerned, then it must be okay. Definitely see this come up a ton. I have found this in my own experience skiing as I was going through kind of my ski guide course training, skiing with other, fully certified guides. I found myself not only just kind of deferring to them in their zones, but almost being, I guess, like embarrassed to ask questions in case I was wrong, or it came off as I was like questioning their abilities. And so I definitely kind of reflected on that afterwards. And it wasn't because those guides were, didn't create an environment where I could ask questions. It was just kind of something I realized I was doing. Tracks and scarcity, they did a good job kind of playing this up in the video. But just that scarcity of fresh powder, untracked lines, all of that fun stuff. I'm sure we're all feeling a bit of the scarcity this winter of just literally no snow anywhere. And so I have seen in myself and like the backcountry here in Washington, when there has been snow, it has been pure chaos. Like this scarcity, inbounds, out of bounds, like people are running for the fresh tracks, not even fresh tracks, anywhere days, after the snow. And so this is like super played out this season. Cool. And then finally, social facilitation. Um, you know, just the idea that if there's a lot of other people there, it's not safe, but like you feel more comfortable because you're surrounded by all these other people essentially making the same decision as you. And I see this. I ski in the Snoqualmie Pass, the Alpental backcountry, and it's interesting because this is somewhere that a lot of guide companies teach their AIARE level 1 courses, so people have never gone out before. This is kind of their first experience in the backcountry, and it's actually like super, kind of complex avalanche terrain. And so we see this spot get super busy, and obviously there's a lot of experienced people most of the time making good decisions, but it is just this, I see it play out all the time in terms of people kind of feeling safe going there because it's kind of all they know, and then also it's crowded all of the time. So just kind of an example for that one. Want to pause quick, see if anyone has thoughts or examples from, their own life that kind of stand out. It's fine. If not, we'll have lots of other time to share.
I don't see anything in the chat, and I'm not seeing
I have an
hands raised.
example.
Oh, Estelle. Yeah.
Before I took my AIARE class, my friend convinced me to hit side country, which is not a thing I learned. Um, because it's familiar, it's off of my local resort, and because it didn't feel like real backcountry because it's off the lift, you know. That was interesting to learn from my instructor that you shouldn't call it that, and also that looking back, that day was not a very smart day to do that. So, a warning, I guess.
Yeah, super common. Thanks for sharing.
I just want to jump in. Estelle, thanks for bringing that up. There is this idea that side country is safe, and it's sort of a term that we're trying to move people away from using because it's terrain that's not controlled, right? So just because you can access it from a lift, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily safer. It's not being controlled. And so you do see that people do get caught and avalanches there. So if you are going into the side country, you need to be able to assess your risk in that terrain, what the snowpack is like, what the avalanche danger is like, and not consider it. It's not necessarily safer. It's not even necessarily. It's not safer at all than what people might consider backcountry. So we're trying to move to like you're either skiing in the resort or it's backcountry. There's two places. That's it. There's no in between. And Zoom, appreciate it. I just got balloons, so good for me. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for bringing that up, Estelle.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think we see, if others have seen this, when you exit the resort, there's usually a sign or like a avalanche beacon, poster. These are the things you should be carrying. But then we kind of have this social facilitation human factor playing in because you see a bunch of people exiting these gates and not with backpacks on. Not everyone, is ready for that. And so we kind of see that factor play out of feeling comfortable because there's a lot of other people going who might not also know the risk. So yeah, thanks both of you. Cool. So tips to kind of manage these human factors we just went over and a lot of other stuff. So good for anyone experienced or, as people get into it and are looking for partners. But stuff we can do before we actually go out into the field is plan with today's conditions, not your memory. So this just means having, a consistent planning routine you use every time, no matter where you are, whether you've been there 100 times or you're in a new state, new country. This kind of just forces us to consider the day's conditions and like not really take into account other times we've been there, at least in terms of, safety decision making. There's, historic stuff that we can worry about, but in general, have a consistent planning routine. One, and this is a big one we do as guides, is in like during our guides meetings, we close terrain at home and never open it in the field. And kind of what that means is when you're chatting with your friends, your partners, whoever you're going out with the night before, the morning of, whatever it is, you're kind of saying what terrain you're not going to travel in, whether that's like a certain aspect, elevation, run, whatever it is. You're crossing that out. You're saying we're not going there today because you're making this decision in the warm, whatever, drinking your coffee with all of the information available to you. Once you're out in the field and you see, other people skiing it or conditions are different than what you expect, it's easy to kind of get clouded and then decide to, go ski that slope that you had initially closed for a good reason, like you had a reason to do it. And so we say never open the train once you're in the field. You can always close more, based on what you're seeing out there. But kind of sticking to this is a huge thing, again, we don't want to be making those big decisions out in the field. Cool. And on that note, making plan B almost as good as plan A. So if you are out there and having to close additional terrain and kind of, scratch plan A, having a really good plan B that you're still excited about and you're gonna, go home feeling, that you got a worthwhile day is super important because if not, you're probably gonna talk yourself into sticking with plan A. And I see this with, I don't know, like my workouts day to day. I have to make my plan A or plan B similarly enticing to actually go through with it. So yeah, kind of what you can do before the tour to make sure that your decision making is clear-headed in the field. Partners, choosing partners you can be fully honest with. This means speaking up in the field, but that also you're just comfortable sharing most things with, because all of these other, and we'll get into this more, environmental factors, emotional states, like you have to be comfortable sharing that with the people that you're around, and then they have to respect that every, veto counts, no questions asked. And so this essentially means, at any point, regardless of what's happening, if it's a bluebird pow day and everything's super stable and someone's just like, I'm not feeling this, like I'm not good, then they should be your group norm that you turn around. People can be upset. It might suck. You might have missed out on good skiing, but that's just kind of the norm that at least I set with my partners so that, that's what makes people feel comfortable speaking out when it matters most. And then once we're in the field, being a part of the decision and not just along for the ride. And so this, if you have good partners that you're comfortable talking things through, should be a lot easier. And if you are out with either, a lot of you are new, you're going to be going out with more experienced people. Asking questions, making sure you're comfortable asking questions. And if at any point you ask a question and that person can't, articulate or explain the decision they are making, that's kind of a red flag. I want to be comfortable hearing from my partners where, that decision making is coming from, that they've considered all of these factors and they can explain themselves. This is holding, ourselves, each other accountable, and just, and it's a good pause to kind of make sure that we're good with the group decision making. And then, tracks are not a stability test. Someone else's decision tells you nothing about the snowpack. We say this inbounds as well, but if just because there's tracks, or just because someone else did whatever in life doesn't mean it's a good idea. So just some tips. I don't know, I'm curious if anyone else has anything before we move on. Tips, tricks. I always like hearing.
just like on the every veto counts, that like it's a thing with backcountry skiing, it's a thing with like I feel like a lot of other just outdoor decision making, but like all to go, one to say no. So like
Mm,
everyone's got to be on board for us to go, and if there's one no, we're not doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add something too to that. Thinking about seeing other people's tracks or seeing other groups go out, unless you have an actual conversation with them, you don't understand their comfort level with risk, right? So everyone has different levels of comfort with different types of risk. And that's why you see some people might be riskier than others. And it's simply because they feel oftentimes they have the skills and the experience and they feel confident in mitigating that risk. And everybody's different. So just because someone else has done it, like they might understand the risk in a way that you don't, and they might be okay with it. And so I would add that that would be something not only worth talking about with your own group, like what's the level of risk that everyone is comfortable with, but also understanding that anybody else out there, you don't know if they are risk adverse or completely on the other side of the spectrum and just open to any kind of risk. And that's everything that we do, whether we get in our car and we drive down the interstate or we go into the backcountry, we're signing on to a certain level of risk, and it really helps to think about what your personal level is, and are you with people who can support that and mirror that risk too.
for sure. Yeah, love that. I want to find this quote that I've seen in other companies that I love. I'm gonna butcher it, but basically risk perception. Basically, you don't know your risk tolerance until you understand what the risk is or what it means. So love that. And I think we were gonna run this like speed dating partner event this winter, and we had created all of these like stickers for people in terms of like, what they thought their risk tolerance was around, their fitness level, their ski ability, stuff like that. And so these are all factors that play into picking your partners that you're gonna feel comfortable around.
I also had a comment. Can you guys
Oh
hear
yeah.
me?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I was in a really big avalanche last season with my partners and we all survived. But like kind of one of the big takeaways for me from that whole experience was just like following your little voice, kind of like you've honed on already. If you're out there, you if you feel something doesn't feel right, like say it, and choose partners that are receptive to that little voice because we all have one of those and sometimes it just doesn't feel right. So
yeah. Thanks for sharing, and definitely gonna dive a bit more into that. Cool. So again, I said we were gonna kind of not pick apart, but like dive a little bit deeper than facets. But quick timeline, basically 2022 is when facets kind of came about, I think. And it was really important because human decision making was not part of the avalanche education conversation. And so it's this huge shift for the industry to kind of bring this in at all. And since then, it's been the dominant model in avalanche education. And if you've taken a level one, AIARE level two, you might have, heard it or heard people talk about it. But then this really great paper came out. I have it referenced in the back because I forget their names in 2020 that it kind of starts to critique this method. And, they talk about how this research was based entirely on accident data. They never studied the thousands of times that people used the same heuristics and made it home safe. And so obviously there's such valuable data and information from all of those other backcountry travel days. And so they kind of dive into that a bit more. And, that being said, looking at the positives, these heuristics aren't always traps. Cognitive science shows they can be highly effective tools, especially for experienced decision makers. And the avalanche community kind of only took away this negative framing, which has been great. And like any conversation about human decision making in this industry is great. So definitely not trying to bash facets, but I think this paper was really great and it's just helping the industry move forward and continue to build on this framework. So excited to talk about it. So yeah, moving beyond facets, how we make decisions is shaped by everything happening around us, which is a lot all at once. And this is where we can start to reflect on just our day-to-day decision making, even outside of the backcountry as we talk through some of this. But yeah, your environment, stuff outside your brain. The physical environment is constantly feeding us information. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes, it's ambiguous, and how we individually interpret this is where, human factors creep in. I think a good example is just if I'm cold, so the environment is just like spitting snow at me or wind or whatever, I kind of have this, mindset of just move faster or like, keep my hood up. So being aware of that for myself is like, okay, just because my fingers are cold doesn't mean I get to stop thinking about risk. So just an example there. And then in terms of our group, we talked a lot about partners and expert halo, but it kind of goes beyond, just diving more into the actual dynamics of, who planned the tour, who's navigating, who's out in front, what's our established norms for decision making, all of that fun stuff. And then something that's huge is who are you that day? Maybe you've taken all of your area, trainings, or you feel really good in terms of your technical abilities, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to stuff like your energy level, your emotional state. Did you sit in the car for 3 hours before you got here? Are you distracted about something going on in life? All of these different things are going to impact how we make our decisions. And a good example I like to talk about is when I am on my period, I make, like, I'm not comfortable skiing things I normally am. I'm not comfortable making, I find myself being way more risk averse. And this was, one thing when I was just skiing with my friends or recreationally, I kind of could just take days off or, be in pain and stay home and just admit defeat. But I've had to rethink this kind of aspect of myself as a guide because now I have work and I'm responsible for people's lives and like being out there teaching or guiding, whatever it is. And so I've kind of brought that into my conversation with my, people I work with. I've even, gone to the extent of planning certain guide days around my cycle just because I know it's going to impact my decision making so deeply. So I'm super aware of that kind of factor for me. And then the feedback problem. This is something this paper talks about a lot, but essentially that the backcountry is a wicked learning environment. So the mountain is not, giving us feedback on every decision. And so this is potentially enforcing bad habits over time because, we might not get feedback from the mountain or, the environment until it's too late. And so I think really thinking about what did you get away with on a day-to-day basis, or like at least maybe it was nothing, but like bringing that into your debrief conversation. It's something I always bring up in my level 1 courses and kind of encourage students to build this into their routine early on. And so when you're debriefing with your group at the end of the day, on the car ride home, whatever it is, I think it's a good question to ask, did you get away with anything today? Anything you would have done differently? Because you could be skiing the same slope, making what you think is a responsible decision based on conditions or whatever it is that could be reinforcing this bad pattern that, you're not making bad decisions on purpose, but you're not getting the necessary feedback. And so that's is a hard one, but it's, again, a way to mitigate this is to take that self-reflection or, talk to mentors, talk to other experts. I don't know, like use your resources to kind of get feedback outside of the mountains. If that makes sense. Cool. And then another piece I like to talk about is this missing dimension. So we talk about you know, expert halo, but the dynamic around decision making goes much beyond that and is driven by sometimes this unbalanced power structures. And this could show up in so many different ways. Just some examples, you know, dynamics around gender, experience level, age, perceived authority. All of these things impact whose concerns get voiced and whose get dismissed. And so this is different than just referring to, you know, expertise. And one example, just because this is kind of something that's happened to me, is, you know, a less experienced woman's valid concern being brushed off by a more vocal male, not because, you know, he has more expertise, but because of this identity bias that's just kind of unfortunately built in sometimes. And so I think being able to recognize some of these patterns to not only be sure that your voice is heard, but that you have these patterns in mind to then make sure others' voices are heard as well, and you can kind of help be part of that change in the unbalanced power structures that we might be seeing out in the backcountry. And obviously, we probably see this in other work environments, in other just life situations, and so just really wanted to call it out and kind of pause to talk about it and reflect on maybe where each of our roles fall. So if people are comfortable jumping in and maybe talking about where, you know, you kind of think you're reflected in a group situation, or where you found yourself in backcountry decision making or in life, just anything you feel comfortable sharing or things that you might have reflected on, and feel free to put it in the chat or speak out.
Alexis, I just want to say about this. I work with a lot of guides for the trips that I run, whether it be like my cycling trips in Kenya. I work with local partners on the ground, and the ski trips in Japan that I run. We work with people on the ground. And one thing that I make sure to do before I even meet them face to face or show up is to have this exact conversation, because my groups are all women, non-binary, trans folks. And so I will have this conversation of like, look, this is how, like, we are going to listen to what people say. We're going to make people feel heard. We're going to respect people's comfort levels. We're not trying, like, not everyone's trying to full send and go big. Like, that's not the vibe. And so I find that having that conversation in advance helps to set the tone of what our experience is going to be like. And it also lets the guide know I'm not fucking around. Like, this is how this is going to be. And I think that it helps my group feel a lot more comfortable. But it is something like, because a lot of times I don't have the opportunity to hire a woman to be the guide, and so it is what it is. But being really comfortable speaking up and telling people, like telling the expert paid guide this is how it's going to go, is something that I would encourage people to do, because you need that tone set. You don't need to be out in the field arguing with some bro about how it's going to go down.
Love that. I think more personal reflection too is I am just pretty soft-spoken, and I'm also just like a smaller person, which I don't know. Like sometimes I've seen this play into things because people who are both louder, like physically and verbally, just kind of take over. You know, I see how people listen to them more than me sometimes when I'm saying the same thing. So that's kind of, you know, something I have learned to work around, but then also I see it in other people with similar, um, you know, factors as me. And so I try to use what I've learned to kind of help them manage this, or and then help people who are on the other side, include them as well. So anyone else?
Um, this is Rachel. Something that I've experienced is that when I've been in situations, when I'm maybe the less experienced person, um, I always make a point to try and, you know, let other people know my skill level or my familiarity with what we're doing. But I think sometimes being less experienced can also be taken as like a you're maybe less intelligent in your decision making, or you have a you don't know your own risk factor as well because you haven't been put in that situation. And so I think I've struggled to be like clear that I might not know how to do the thing that we're doing, but it doesn't make me any less like intelligent in assessing that this could be dangerous maybe, or that like for me I can tell that this is not a good decision based on my own risk factor and experience in other ways. So I think yeah, trying to stand up for myself in that way can be really difficult, but is really important to do.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I've definitely felt that as well. And like at the end of the day, it just matters what you're comfortable with or not, right? So makes sense. Anyone else have felt that or something similar?
Rachel J put in the chat, agreeing about being overlooked. Soft-spoken person, although I'm on the tall side. People will often
Mhm.
listen more once I've politely held my ground a few times about a decision and or after I've brought it up enough points that the group hadn't considered.
Love that. But yeah, and I think going back to what Jen said, if you are in a new group, if you're on a guided trip, whatever it is, like same as the terrain conversation, planning conversation, all of this is better done out of the field before you're, even put in a situation where you're having to make a hard decision. So just a good, yeah, good conversation. Cool. How decisions actually get made. Again, kind of just went over this, but our decisions at any given moment is the result of one bias. It isn't the result of one bias or one factor. It's the product of everything happening at once. So, it's easy to talk through facets and it's a nice checklist and it provides a lot of good context. But at the end of the day, good decision making isn't about, memorizing facets and how to avoid those things. It's about building awareness of the whole picture and creating habits that help you, like individually, pause when it matters most, and then build a team of partners and a routine that also, it helps pause when it matters most in terms of making decisions. And so, a few ways that I want to talk about it and how I've done it is, and we kind of just talked about this, but knowing your own triggers. So recognizing personal patterns most likely to get you in trouble. And so I kind of talked about, being on my period or being cold. Like those are two big ones for me. I have a lot of others, but I've done a lot of work in the outdoors and as a guide to know those triggers because again, it's one thing when you're recreating, but when you are now have that like extra responsibility in a leadership position or keeping others safe, you just like really, really have to be aware of these personal patterns and how to manage them. Choosing your partners, talked a lot about this, but I think also calling out people who might balance your own strengths and that you also trust to speak up when it matters. So obviously you want the people around you to make space for you to speak up, but you also want to feel good that like you're not the only voice, right? Like you want all of your partners about a part of the conversation and balancing strengths. Obviously, you don't want to over rely on this, but I think making same thing with any like relationship or other friendship that you have, kind of having this well-rounded group or partner is going to make, your decision-making process a lot stronger. And then yeah, building a system. Kind of got to figure out what this looks like for you, and we'll dive into that in a second. But any repeatable set of habits that you follow every tour that is going to, no matter the weather, no matter how much you slept, no matter the terrain you're skiing, what state you're in, anything like that, you're gonna have this habit that or this routine that's gonna ensure that you're making, the best decisions possible. And this is something as simple as, something I do is try to stick to in personal land guiding, a snack break every hour and like packs off. So this is like a real pause. And it's to eat snacks, but it's also for me a good kind of conversation point and just casually talking to the group about how are we feeling still? Like, has anything changed? What is the weather like? Are we still kind of all on the same page in what we're doing, and feeling good so far? And so that's a good routine that I have built in. Again, simple, but something that's just keeps my day and decision making structured. Cool. So, and I think, I don't know if it's like cut off in an hour or what it is, but basically everything from here is just conversation. And so, probably sick of hearing me talk, but hopefully some of this was helpful. But I definitely want to like dive into some of this. But if people need to run, whatever works for you. But reflecting a little bit on what I just said, like, what's your disaster factor? Just what the, a term we call it, but like that pattern that's most likely to get you in trouble. I won't read everything that's on the slide, but just some quotes I either made up or found that other people have reflected on. But if anyone is comfortable sharing, I'm curious if this conversation is like prompt something or you're already aware of something you do.
I know that I can, while you were talking about this, like snacks and stuff, that it definitely depends on what group I'm with. And if I'm in a group where I feel very seen, like if I'm with a bunch of femmes, non-binary people, women, people of color, like I feel way more fun being like, I'm gonna be in the very back, I'm going slow, can we take a break? I'm ready to take my pack off. I need to pee, like literally voicing all the things. Um, but then like I know I can fall in if I'm with a group that either is like professional skiers or professional snowboarders, and I'm like all of a sudden getting this like, oh, I have to live up to this. And we'll all of a sudden like let things kind of go. And I'm like, wow, I would never have gone this long without taking my pack off, or never gone this long without having a snack. Or even just like trying to push myself to go faster than I'm actually like comfortable. And then I'm just like burning myself out. So I know that's one for me that totally can it's a trap for me.
Yeah, super relatable. Anyone else?
That sunk cost gets me in every part of my life. Every single part of my life. I've been doing this. So I like,
Yeah.
God, this is Alexis, this is really helpful. I love it. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Rachel put in the chat the fatigue pattern is relatable. I definitely get sloppy with my skiing technique at the end of the day and push myself too much. Yeah. Yep.
Same. Yeah, and I forget, I think it was Fern talking about trusting your gut. Um, Super important, but then also like it could happen the opposite way where you're maybe like overconfident. So, but either way, I think, yeah, trusting your body feelings is good. Anyone else? Kind of have a few more little discussion questions. Well, yeah, thanks for those who did speak up on this, but I think, post this presentation this week before you decide to get into the backcountry or take an area level one, try to write this down. Think about patterns that either do or like are most likely to get you in trouble, so that you're just aware of them as you start this journey. It's been super helpful for me, and kind of feeds into all of the other things we've talked about. So definitely encourage people to reflect on this more. And then those who, have toured recently, or maybe you've done a resort day, or done something else outside or at work, like what was actually driving your decisions? An example, I went out this past weekend with friends who the group kind of got jumbled the night before, and it was basically I was the the like overlap between two friend groups that I had never met, and I really wanted them to get along. and have a fun day. And so I feel like I let that drive some of my decision making prior to the tour and like tour planning, just because I was so focused on like having the best day and doing something that was going to be good for everyone and making them be friends, as opposed to like, okay, what's the weather? What time are we starting? So anyone else?
I definitely feel like when I have traveled a far distance, my risk tolerance increases. Like,
Mm.
yeah, I'm in Kenya. I came all the way this way. Like, I'm gonna full send down this in a way that like I would not do in Reno. In Reno, I'd be like, no, I'm fine. But so I know that I do that for myself. I mean, I have heaps of fun. I don't have anything bad to say about it, but I notice that's what I do.
Yeah, I feel like mine is kind of similar to what I had just said, but I just went on one that the point was actually not really skiing. It was a uh did we just lose? Oh no. Okay. I thought Alexis left. It was a photo shoot, and so it was like just kind of this like frantic, urgent energy of like we need to find snow, and so then that started like definitely clouding some. It was like if we can ski, great, but we were like, nothing froze last night. Probably not a good idea to ski anything. And so there was just like other factors guiding like where we were going. And all of a sudden it was like we had to regroup to be like, okay, can we all agree that we're actually not going to ski anything with a slope really? Because it's a bad idea. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Um, Anything else? Has anyone had an experience where like you reflecting on, yeah, something else that made you make questionable decisions? I know Jen and Evan just kind of talked about making different decisions than they usually would. But yeah, I think another good reflection exercise, if nothing goes wrong on your tour, like it all is just positive, like taking the time to think, okay, well, it's actually driving my decisions or decision throughout the day. Because it's again, we're just gonna keep learning from going out and actually making decisions. So only way to do that is debrief, reflect, talk to your partners. Cool. Just some other like food for thought. Are we making different decisions when you're the one leading versus following? I definitely, and this has like kind of come up with a few of us already. Um, but if you're either, I see this pattern when I'm with my friends who are like really experienced, but then are skiing with me or another guide, like just falling into brain off mode. It's super easy for it to happen. But just kind of being aware of, your decision making kind of changing in that dynamic. Um, and yeah, do your tour differently depending on who you're with. What changes do you make and why? I think it was, I forget who, maybe Jen was talking about, moving faster with people who are, not that you're trying to impress, but like just trying to keep up and doing something you normally wouldn't. Um, and then yeah, any like bad decisions that we've gone away with, how did that shape, your behavior on future tours? Curious if anyone has thoughts on any of these. Again, not trying to make people talk, but I think this is like the most valuable. Like I want to hear, I want to learn.
I made a really bad decision in Japan last year, not this season, but last year, and not with clients because I am much more conservative when I have people there, but when I'm with friends, I'm less conservative on things, and we didn't bring out our beacon shovel probe. We didn't, and because we're like, oh, we're just at the resort. And then we ended up in this zone where we were like, oh, fuck, we could go hike that and ski some sick pow in Japan. And we thought to ourselves, like, we don't have what we need. And we said, fuck it, we're gonna go. And so we did this little hike, and then we get up to the top, like at the end of this ridge line, and there's all these dudes behind us who were like trying to follow us. And then we had to say to them, you know, we don't actually know where we're going, nor do we have like beacon shovel probe. Why don't follow us? What do you... So then we had to have this whole conversation with these guys about like we're not like don't follow us. We're doing our own thing. And it was super successful. We had a great ski. We got out. Everything was fine. But at the end of it, my friend and I th said, let's not do that again. That was really foolish. Um, and we did say like that was a bad decision, and we 100% got away with it. Um, and it was I'm glad I made that bad decision to know that I don't want to make another bad decision like that. It took making one for it to sink in,
Which
even
is
though
unfortunately
everything
how
went
it
really
goes.
well.
Yeah, we have to learn the hard way. Anything like would it impact any future tours or decisions, Jen, or kind of just like you're not going to do the same thing?
I just don't want to feel like a piece of shit at the end. I mean, it was a great run, right? Like it was so
Yeah.
amazing. Like nothing
Mhm.
bad happened. Um, but then at the end of it, we were like, yeah, we're just like we're too smart for this. And I just don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel like an idiot when I am too
Yeah.
smart for things like that. So that's what like I'll just, I just know that every time I go out in Japan, I'm gonna always have beacon shovel probe because the opportunity to ski out of the resort is there, and I don't want to miss out on it. Like I want to go, and so I want to make sure that I have all of it, and I'll just be more prepared in the future for sure.
Yeah, I feel like that's a huge one I've started doing. Is carrying Beacon Shovel Pro because once you're like in the resort and you have the option to do something else because it's similar. I talked about it earlier, like your plan A, plan B, like you're planning to ski resort, but then all of a sudden your eyes start wandering and you're like, ooh, that looks so good up there. Like I could just freak out, but yeah, I'm kind of always being prepared for that. Uh, Yeah, I also, Jen, calling you out the if you're ever telling someone not to follow you, possible red flag of why you're making that decision. I've done it. Like, don't follow me down this slope. Like, it's not gonna ski well. Anyone else? Throw stuff in the chat if you can't speak up, but
I
Um,
once, oh, go
oh,
for it. Whoever else just said I've talked enough.
sure.
sorry.
Rachel, go for
This
it.
is Rachel S. Thank you. I don't have a ton of backcountry experience, but I live in Colorado and we have our 14ers here, which are um, wonderful to do in the summer. But and also we have afternoon thunderstorms, which the combination of makes kind of for some tricky or careful planning. Um, so I went out with friends last summer to hike, and our goal was at least to get to an alpine lake at the base and then summit if we could. But we knew based on our planning that there was a storm or at least some rain coming in the afternoon. But by the time we got to the lake, it looked clear and we were having a great time. And so we changed our plans and decided to summit and ended up with a very scary rainstorm running down. Definitely not a situation that I would have imagined myself to be in or wanted to be in. Everything was okay. But I think that goes back to one of the points I was made earlier about um I think I forget the like saying that it goes by, but if you close it off in your plans before, like don't open it up, like you close it for a reason. You made that decision when you had your like whole planning session before. So that like I think that rule should have applied to that in the past. And yeah, I'm definitely gonna remember that one in the future.
Yeah, thanks for sharing it. Again, like any outdoor experiencer, I've definitely had this things come up in, biking, running, anything. So, mm, What else? I'm trying to think of any of my other examples. I think just a general, I don't know if I've felt this completely yet, but I know in the guide community it's talked about like when you're out with a bunch of guides, you sometimes are making like riskier decisions or different decisions than you would obviously if you're with clients, but like even with your friends who don't have as much, knowledge or experience. So it's an interesting dynamic. Um, yeah. I also think something that comes up or I've seen is people going to different countries and there's kind of like a language barrier. And I think being aware of how that impacts decision making or like your comfort speaking up. I don't know, random, but I just had that conversation with someone who felt uncomfortable with something down in Chile. But there was like a language barrier between her and her guide or her partner. Yeah. Well, is that my last? Yeah. That was kind of it. I guess if people have to run, but either in the chat or out loud, like one big takeaway that you had, or that, something that you might share with a friend after this. I would love to hear. Yeah.
I think one big takeaway is just like with my ski partners and adventure partners, etc., like having the conversation around like what are your easy to fall into traps for each one of us. And like I think a lot of my partners that I'm very close with or like friends, like I know there's because I'm like, hey, stop that. Stop trying to make us go there. That was not the plan. But like having that be a important piece of the puzzle too when you're like talking about what you're gonna do or what you want to do or what's off limits. Also being like, yeah, like so what's everyone's weak point here, you know? So I think that's just like normalizing that conversation. That's definitely a big takeaway. Yeah. Um, and then a few people have put some things in the chat, but everyone has a voice, whether you have a lot of experience or not. That is a good one.
I like the personal reflection point because I think especially like who are you that day? Because I think sometimes I'll be more introverted than I think I am. And so less likely to say something. So that's a good thing to keep in mind for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I usually start even when I'm teaching just an avalanche course, one of the first questions I ask people is like, how are you? But like more than that, like, did everyone sleep? How was your drive? Like, how are we feeling energy wise? And kind of just like, I think Jen was talking about like establish that in the parking lot and then sets the tone. But cool. Anyone else? I just interrupted that. Hopefully it was helpful. Something was helpful. But if you are, getting into backcountry or you just are a snow nerd, like I also love deep snow science. So my email is here if you want to have that conversation, if you have questions about taking an AIARE course. I love teaching and I love being in that community. So happy to answer any questions before you dive in. I know, getting into this sport is expensive and, hard for just to break into. So I'm happy to just talk literally about anything that's helpful to people. But again, I think this is a framework that can hopefully be applied to more than just your backcountry travel and keep people safe and just like you guys all taking this at least the conversation piece right to your groups and continuing to improve our industry. It's going to be, one step at a time. It's definitely improved a lot since I've even been in it. So, other
Yeah.
questions, thoughts?
I was just gonna say thank you so much. I feel like it was really nice to have a small group to be able to like
Mhm.
discuss, share things, not have judgment about saying like I make and have made bad decisions,
Mhm.
you know, like because we got to be able to learn from them or realize like, oh, I guess that was a bad decision and I wasn't reflecting on that. So I feel like this was just really, really a great send off for the season. Glad that everyone's here and was able to share on some level. So that was just really cool. Um, yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Thank you, Alexis.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks for sharing, everyone.
yeah. Yep, taking lots of people saying they're taking a lot away from this. So that's awesome. And just a reminder for people too that this was recorded, and so we'll send it out. And I feel like people will definitely want to be able to go back and look at your presentation because there was so much good stuff there. So yeah. Yeah. Anything else, Alexis or Jen, from either one of you two? No?
Thank you to both of you. That was great.
Yeah. Thanks
Thanks,
for being
Jen.
here.
Thanks for emceeing.
Yeah. It gets easier. I'm so weird on Zoom. So thanks everyone for supporting me.
I know.
Bye,
Thank
friends.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, Jen. Bye,
Bye. Thank
everybody. Thank
you.
you, Alexis.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Good job.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you. I
Have a
really
good night.
appreciate it. You
Yeah.
too. See ya.